Every year, more than 3 billion air passengers head for the skies. The vast majority return safely to Earth without incident. But a small number experience life-changing moments they will never forget.
It was like a war zone in the sky.
We hear first-hand accounts from the passengers and pilots who have lived through the most shocking extremes of air travel.
Went on the wildest teacup ride you could ever imagine.
From great escapes
Run, it's gonna blow.
to mad moments and highway robbery
This is now going to cost you £24,000.
to highway landings.
Holy!
It's definitely something I don't teach in driving schools, how to avoid a plane.
In the age of the smartphone, these events are caught on camera as never before.
Awesome.
We reveal exclusive footage never seen on television. So keep your seatbelts fastened for the world's wildest flights. In this episode of World's Wildest Flights,
we may end up in the Hudson.
what happens when a jetliner with 150 passengers loses both of its engines over one of the most heavily populated areas on Earth?
I knew we were going to crash, and at that moment, I was almost 100% confident I was going to die.
We hear the story of the greatest escape in aviation history, the miracle on the Hudson. Also, plunging to Earth in shocking storm conditions.
The plane just sunk like a stone and crashed into the ground.
And panic on a burning plane in Peru.
The oxygen mask started falling. Everything inside the plane was destroyed. Everyone was getting desperate.
15th of January 2009, New York, USA. The time and place for an event now famous as the most successful ditching in aviation history. But for Ben Bostic, heading home to North Carolina after his first ever trip to the Big Apple, the day started much like any other.
We were rushing around, trying to finish up so we could get the car, take us to the airport. We're looking at the, radar, seeing the snow coming in. I snapped a few photos out on the street. It was snowing, but it wasn't like that bad yet. It was kind of pretty.
Ben is booked on US Airways Flight 1549 out of LaGuardia Airport.
The weather started coming in and pushed our flight back.
The flight eventually leaves nearly 20 minutes late.
When we were taking off, I was already into my book because we had to sit on the runway for quite a bit. That was part of our delay, so I wasn't really paying much attention.
Yanis Crumbs is also heading home. He's rushing to get a ferry from Manhattan to New Jersey before the weather sets in.
I think I was the last person on the ferry coming back trying to cross the Hudson River, and I ran on, and that's when they pulled up the gates and we were off. Sat down and got on the phone like most people do. It's a quick 5-minute, 6-minute cross across the river. And yeah, I think I got on Twitter even.
Scott Gross and Tom Paratori work for the security team at energy supplier Con Edison. One of their responsibilities is to monitor the company's security cameras, which overlook the Hudson River.
I was actually at the manager's desk at the operations center, and I was just doing typical daily paperwork.
I was in the office all day. Normally, the day-to-day operations would take us out into the field. I was happy to be in the office because it was a brutally cold day.
Flight 1549 has been in the air for less than 2 minutes. Then, at a height of about 3,000 feet, the Airbus A320 plows through a flock of Canada geese.
Heard a loud boom when the geese hit the engines, and it was like a loud series of thumps. The plane shook really violently. I turned to the left and looked out the window, and I could see the left engine on fire.
It hit birds who lost thrust.
At this point, the airliner is about 5 miles northwest of the departure airport.
320.
What was going through my mind was, please come over the radio and say we're going back to LaGuardia. That's all I could think about.
There are thousands of bird strikes on aircraft every year. but usually the plane has at least enough power to return to base. This case is unusual though. The geese caused catastrophic damage to both of the jetliner's engines.
Lost thrust on both engines returning back towards LaGuardia.
One bird strike is dangerous and a super annoyance, and then you still have your other engine to get you out of the problem. When you lose not just one engine, but two engines, that's the part that's unheard of. We practice single engine flying all the time. Not a problem. We can climb out, we can do whatever is necessary. But for him to lose both engines at the same time, that turns that airplane into a glider. That airplane was still flying, but it wasn't going to be flying for long, and they had to make some decisions.
He lost thrust in both engines, he said. Got it.
With no power at a height of 1,600 feet and an airspeed of about 240 miles per hour, the pilot, Chesley Sully Sullenberger, realizes that he won't be able to get back to LaGuardia.
We may end up in the Hudson.
I was continuously looking out the window, but it was so horrific, I couldn't take my eyes off of it. Just the engine burning. We were above one of the most densely populated areas in the world. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever been involved in my life.
The captain, Sully, has to find somewhere to touch down. And in a heavily inhabited area like this, there isn't a great deal of choice.
You cannot land straight into buildings. I'm sorry, but that's not an option. Not when there was water around, because water is the same thing as going out to a desolate area. And the Hudson was perfect for that. You're away from buildings, you're away from people, you're away from population. Now, the fact that you have to set up to land in the water with no engines, that is tough. There's no pilot that envies Sully for having to make that decision to land in the water, knowing that when you hit, even with your gear up, it's like hitting concrete.
We're going to be in the Hudson.
The pilot doesn't have time to explain the situation to the passengers. He can only prepare them for an emergency landing.
He said, "This is your captain, brace for impact." I took a peek up. I knew we were going to hit the water. I knew we were going to crash then. My heart fell out of my chest. At that moment, I was almost 100% confident I was going to die.
Just 5 minutes after takeoff, at a speed of about 140 miles per hour, the plane crash lands in the Hudson River.
So when we made impact, it was really violent. There was a couple twists and a couple tilts where, it felt like, oh, we're gonna flip or something like that. Fortunately, we didn't, because he hit it just right.
Captain Sully's got an entire career behind him, but pilots who have careers behind them don't land in the water. When you're in a situation like this one, you're making decisions based on your understanding of the airplane and the world around you. So you have this airplane that may sink right away. That water was freezing cold. I mean, everything that was against them. And still yet, he was able to land that airplane. Awesome.
The Con Edison camera picks up the downed Airbus just seconds after the crash.
The actual camera itself was aimed at the pier, but once I panned up to the center of the river, that's where you actually saw a wake. And I panned the camera down, and that's when we actually saw the airplane. I was just amazed.
So Scott said, "Hey, you got to see this." I didn't expect to see what was on the screen. I mean, nobody expects to see an A320 floating down the river.
Once we came to a stop, I remember looking down at my hands, and I was like wiggling my fingers. And I don't know why, because I got bigger limbs, but I looked at my legs too eventually and said, oh my gosh, I'm in one piece. I actually survived the impact.
Just a few hundred yards downstream, New York Waterway ferry Thomas Jefferson sets course for the ailing airliner.
The captain came on the speaker and said, "Hey, there's a plane in front of us and we're going to go in for the rescue." Everyone rushed to the windows and tried to see what was going on. And so I initially saw the plane and was like, okay, wow, this is incredible, what's going on here.
But even as the ferry powers towards the aircraft, it's starting to sink as water floods in through a massive hole in the rear section of the fuselage.
It's already up to my knees. The back of the plane was taking on water much faster than the front, because that's where the damage was. So there's people behind me that is probably by now in waist-deep water.
There are 155 souls trapped on a fast-sinking plane on the icy waters of the Hudson River. It's a race against time as a flotilla of ferries rush to the aid of the stricken Airbus. October 2013, Somerset, England. Microlights are small, lightweight aircraft usually flown by amateur aviation enthusiasts. They have a reputation for being somewhat accident-prone, sometimes with disastrous consequences. But one man who walked away to tell the tale is John Merriman. John is a farmer, scuba instructor, and something of a jack of all trades. But for many years, he also longed to be a pilot. So he started looking for a plane to buy.
Always interested in flying, but never had a chance to fly. I'd found an X-Air, which I realised was quite an easy aircraft to fly. So I decided to buy it. Got someone to fly it back to my strip in Somerton.
John signed up veteran commercial airline captain Chris Harrison to show him the ropes.
He had a desire to learn to fly, as a lot of people do. So much so that he bought himself a small aeroplane, and then he looked to me to teach him to fly in it, which I did. And I have to say, and I know he won't mind me telling you, that he was one of the difficult students.
Flying didn't always come easy for John, and he did have one particular weakness: getting the plane back to ground safely.
Didn't get on very well with the landings, that was the problem. That dragged on for a long, long time. Every time I came in to land, I got the airspeed wrong, and Chris had to take control at the last minute.
I think I visited most parts of the runway with him that I'd never seen ever before. And though I suggested to him at one point he might like to consider doing something else, like take up vintage cars or motorcycles, he said, no, I want to carry on, if you don't mind. I said, well, all right, then we'll stick with it. And eventually he managed it.
All of a sudden, it's like a lot of these hobbies and sports, you just clicks and you don't know what you were doing wrong, and it all comes together.
After about 30 hours of training, John feels ready for his first solo flight.
Once I started taxiing down the runway, got the full power up. A little bit nervous to start with. It's a strange thing going up the runway with no one in the passenger seat. Your instructor's not there to help you if you do have an issue.
Chris is keeping a wary eye from the ground.
Everybody that goes solo the first time, they don't really want to do it.
Once you're airborne, then you get up to, say, 100, 150 feet, you start looking, you've got no one there, so it's obviously a bit creepy. You're on your own. So that's a bit worrying to start with, to be quite honest.
See the two tall trees on their own? He would have taken off just to the left of those and headed out towards the hills. Every student that takes their first flight, you watch them intently all the way around the circuit.
Obviously the nerves started to kick in as I started to get nearer the landing point.
He did a perfect three-point landing and rolled in with a big grin on his face.
John is flushed with success at his first ever solo flight. If only it had stopped there. But his instructor has other ideas.
Chris said, do you want to do another solo flight? I didn't have a lot of time that day, actually. I should have been back home. But I said yes. So I carried on, started my second solo flight.
So took off in that direction over there, climbed up to about 700 feet, made a right turn, go around the circuit.
A bit more relaxed this time because I'd done one, exactly the same as before, power up, got up to about 50 knots, pulled the stick back. So I thought, yeah, this is going to be a good one.
The engine starts stuttering, then cuts out completely.
Stops, just basically stopped dead, like as if something had gone bang in it.
The crankshaft has broken, so the plane has no power at all.
Well, the first thing you feel a real utter silence. Everything it becomes like a glider. There's no noise whatsoever. You naturally start slowing down. And the aircraft started dropping fairly quick, a lot quicker than I expected.
And then all of a sudden, I heard on the radio, "Mayday, Mayday." And I looked out and I could see his aeroplane descending.
John is now about 800 feet up in his microlight without any power. He searches desperately for a safe spot to bring the aircraft down.
You're looking for preferably a grass field, quite a long one, preferably flat. Overhead cables are the important thing. They're very hard to find. You can see the poles, but you can't see the cable. So that's something you've got to be very careful about. Did see a field right ahead, which looked a good option, and basically went for it. At about 300 feet, I noticed some electric cables. At that time, I had to make quite a serious decision then. Was I going to fly over the cables and land, or was I going to fly under them? And decided there was only one option, to land in front of them.
John drops like a stone to avoid the power cables, then hits the field at a terrifying 50 miles an hour.
Quite a drastic descent, and then I levelled off up the field.
Unfortunately, just 50 yards along John's improvised landing strip, there's an irrigation ditch.
Hit a rut in the field, which took one of the undercarriages off. The aircraft come to an abrupt halt.
Obviously, he was out of sight at that point, so we all jumped in vehicles and went off to look for him.
I'm okay. Got out, jumped out, looked at the damage, quite upset, but at least I was walking away from it.
Yeah, bash the plane around on land, yeah.
Chris and another guy from the airfield came over to help. Chris was quite happy. He said I was a really good job.
He managed to get out, and I could see him go, that's wrecked my plane. But at least he walked away, and he did a good job of it, I must admit.
John's aircraft was a write-off, but the crash hasn't put him off flying. He's bought himself a new plane and is happy to be back behind the yoke again.
I still love flying. Try and fly whenever the weather's good, to be quite honest. It's probably taught me quite a lot more than you'd learn from an instructor. So yeah, it's done me a lot of good, I think, really, yeah.
15th of January 2009. US Airways Flight 1549 has ditched in the Hudson River after a flock of geese took out both engines of the Airbus A320 less than 2 minutes after takeoff from New York LaGuardia Airport. A security camera on the nearby Con Edison building tracks the plane as it drifts seawards.
You weren't quite sure what was going on. You didn't know how it happened or what had happened. Here's a plane landed on the water, is in one piece, doors are open, people are disembarking off an aircraft and staying on the wings.
My worries were that the plane would sink before the rescue operation could be completed, and that the loss of life would be huge.
Yanis Crumbs is on board a New York waterway ferry, racing to the aid of the stricken airliner.
We see this Airbus floating there, and it was like, it was scary. Also, the scene that we were going to approach to, it was going to be potentially very gruesome, because you don't expect people to survive that.
Ben Bostic was one of the 150 passengers trapped on the jetliner as it drifted along the Hudson River. Today, he's come down to the Carolinas Aviation Museum in his hometown of Charlotte, where the restored plane is now on display, to explain how he managed to escape from the waterlogged aircraft on that fateful day.
I was in the back on this side of the plane, row 20 out of 26. We couldn't use the rear exits because they were damaged and underwater. So opening them would just bring in more water, and water was already coming in really fast. So when it got to about my knees, the flight attendant said, we gotta go forward, climb over to seats. I climbed over to seats till about row 12. That's when I noticed the flight attendant who was standing right outside the cockpit. She was motioning for me to come forward. She apparently had a lot of room on the rafts when the wings were starting to fill up. She directed me out this door. It was roughly similar to this with a raft in it. She says jump, so I jumped, slid down the slide into the raft, and it was roughly half full. When I got there, by the time everybody was out, it was jam-packed.
Ben is out of the aeroplane, but he's still standing in a packed raft up to his ankles in icy water. Fortunately, help is on the way.
It was just a matter of 3 or 4 minutes before we actually saw the first ferry beginning to approach the aircraft on our camera.
I'm thinking, all right, we got hope here. People are helping, just like New Yorkers do. They, in a crisis situation, everybody bonded together. These captains took their vessels and drove it toward a plane that could sink, damage their vessel. They put themselves into harm's way rescuing these people.
Yanis is on the Thomas Jefferson, the first ferry to approach the aeroplane as it drifts down the Hudson.
As we were pulling up to the plane, me and a bunch of other passengers were taking photos, and I took a pretty dramatic photo just because of where it is and what the situation is. And that's what I put on Twitter, tweeting, there's a plane in the Hudson going in for the rescue. Crazy. Very eloquent.
Yanis's photo spread like wildfire around the world. Perhaps the first time social media had broken news in this way. But for Ben on the raft, the arrival of the Thomas Jefferson was the real good news story.
Seeing the ferry was beautiful. Felt like, you know, okay, I'm gonna survive. That was my first sense of like, we're getting out of this thing. There was staged senses of how safe I was, from the time I thought I was for sure gonna die to the time I thought maybe I got an 80% chance of survival. When I saw that ferry, I was probably up to about 98%.
It was pretty much quiet, dead quiet, and there was remember a baby crying. There's no noise at all. The people just staring at us. They were just in shock. They were just, you know, they were freezing, and they were trying to get off that plane and get on the ferry.
The ferries weren't designed to approach an aircraft. They're designed to approach a fixed height pier where, you know, they know how to get people on and off a ferry. How are you going to get people on and off of a ferry from a wing of an aircraft? So just to see the crew manipulate and jockey around and get the gear in place and get everything just right to make sure those people did not fall into the water. Relief, utter relief.
The deck of the ferry, I want to say, was probably about 7 feet above the raft level. So they threw down, you know, the rope-style ladder that they had, and that's how it got up to the top. But the crew members of the ferry, they were laying on the deck, on their bellies, reaching down as far as they could to help us get up.
The crews are on the edge, and then we were the second wave of people trying to help whatever way we could. One of them was the stewardess who had broken her leg, and so I was one of the people who helped her carry her inside and then put her on the bench and see how we could help her.
The people on the ferry were great. They were like giving us gloves, giving us their jackets. You know, it was super cold that day, but they wanted to help any way they could. It's taking us to the heating vents on the ferry. They knew where they were. They rode them every day, right? And giving us prime real estate on the ferry. I took a few pictures. I said, I have to get pictures of this because I can't believe it happened. You know, is it real? Am I gonna like wake up from a bad dream or whatever? And it was just so surreal. That's the first thing I did, was look back at the plane.
Once we saw the last few individuals board the ferries, and the ferries begin to move away from the actual aircraft itself and head towards safety, that's when I knew that things were going to be okay.
The moment that I really felt like that I could totally relax was not until I reached land. I was just happy, happy to be alive, hoping everybody else made it off okay, or it would have been a totally different outcome for all of us, even if one wouldn't have made it.
All of the 155 people on board Flight 1549 made it safely to shore, thanks to the skill of Captain Sullenberger and his crew, and the New Yorkers who came to their rescue, as the Airbus sank slowly into the icy waters of the Hudson. February 2017, Edinburgh, Scotland. Gary Campbell is a professional card player who travels around Europe playing a game called Magic the Gathering. He describes it as a cross between poker and chess.
I fly probably 2, 3, 4 times a month to various tournaments around Europe. Generally between 1,200 and 2,200 players turn up to them. It's been a lot of years since I did so well, but I really enjoy them. It gives me an excuse to travel all these European cities and meet friends.
This time he's flying out from Edinburgh on his way to a tournament in Utrecht in Holland.
The weather was poor, but it's February in Scotland, so that's normal. I got to departures and they said there was a delay. The weather in Amsterdam was too poor to travel.
In fact, air travel across much of the Atlantic seaboard of Europe has been disrupted by Storm Doris. This is a major weather system with terrifying wind gusts reaching speeds of nearly 100 miles an hour.
I don't know if the weather got better, but we left 2 hours after we should have.
Flybe BE1284 and its 59 passengers finally leave Edinburgh Turnhouse Airport at 2:10, en route for Schiphol Amsterdam Airport. Dutch plane spotter Michael Splinter is also on his way to Schiphol.
There was a storm rolling in that day. Really makes it interesting for people filming and probably for the pilots to land also, and a bit anxious for the passengers inside.
Gary is flying in a Bombardier Dash 8.
I don't care much for travelling on these small planes, but no choice.
And he is hitting some severe weather as he approaches the Netherlands.
It's bumpy going through the clouds as always, but it continued to rock and shake going below the clouds, so I knew it was windy.
Down on the ground, Michael is shooting some dramatic footage of the planes coming into land on the east runway. The bigger runways at the airport are shut because of the wind.
They use the shortest runway they have there. Normally they use it for business jets, but this day they almost use it for every flight because the other runways were closed down. Really crazy day. It was always great to be there when the wind is going like this.
It might be fun filming in these conditions, but Gary is not enjoying his roller coaster ride in the skies above Amsterdam.
As we're approaching the runway, yeah, the plane was rocking around and then it kept rocking all the way down, but these guys do this all the time.
But these are truly exceptional weather conditions. At the time of the landing, it's estimated there were wind gusts of over 50 miles per hour.
Yeah, you saw them approach and you see them make a little bit of a dive to the runway because it's a really small runway.
The Dash 8 is battered by the fierce wind as it drops the last few meters to the ground.
It would have been just approximately touchdown when the plane just sunk like a stone and crashed into the runway. You could hear the sound, the huge crack. And the plane kind of jumped for a second, and that was when, this is a problem.
It was landing on a right landing gear first, and then a split second later it slammed to the ground with the left, and the airplane banged.
The propeller hit the ground, pinged away, and the wing scraped along the tarmac. Sparks everywhere. It was getting closer to the grass, And I thought, if that catches the grass, this could go horrible.
The plane stops after scraping along the runway for more than 20 seconds.
It come to a halt, and everybody was quiet and calm. There wasn't much noise. Everybody looked around at each other, and there was a few whoops.
But the ordeal isn't quite over yet.
The next thing was the horrendous smell of burning. So from being calm to that smell was a wee bit frightening, because I thought, what's up here now? But it was just the stewardess opening the back door, and it was a smell from the plane scraping along the runway. The stewardess then quickly shouted, "Hurry, hurry, everybody out, everybody out." And everybody stood up, and they all ran out.
It's scary to see the people run out for their lives out of the airplane. It's difficult to watch also.
Nobody was seriously injured, but Gary was badly shaken by the whole incident. He didn't compete in the tournament in Utrecht, and when he returned to Schiphol 2 days later, he just couldn't face the flight back to Edinburgh.
I was looking at the plane, thinking, look at these little wheels, look at these stupid propellers. So I says, no, I'm not going to go on this.
Gary ended up taking the long way home.
I got a bus from Amsterdam to Utrecht, Utrecht to Brussels, Brussels to Antwerp, Antwerp to Ghent, Ghent, Calais, Calais, London. Waited there for 3 hours. It was -4, I remember. Eventually got on that bus, and that went to Sheffield, then Leeds, Newcastle, got to Edinburgh, and that full trip was 34.5 hours. It was a horrendous journey, but I still felt like it was definitely worth it.
March 2017, Lima, Peru. Lawyer Jessica Nunez Herrera is leaving her 1-year-old son behind as she heads up country from the capital for a legal hearing.
When the taxi came to collect me, my son started to cry. So I said goodbye to my little boy, and he said I'll be back soon.
She is flying out from Lima to the small regional city of Jauja.
The airport had just been constructed very recently, maybe less than a month before this accident. It was a brand new runway.
In fact, Peruvian Airlines had only just added this new route from the capital.
This part of the country is not accessible unless you take a bus or climb into a car for hours. So people were really looking forward to being able to actually fly.
Also taking advantage of the new route is archaeologist Moira Novoa Silva, who is working on a nearby dig.
It seemed like a normal journey, the same as any other. It was a bit delayed, but the plane took off with no problems.
The plane was in pretty good condition and didn't seem to have any technical defects at the time.
It's only about a 40-minute journey, so before they know it, the 150 people on board flight P9112 are preparing to land.
When the pilot was beginning to descend and telling the crew to prepare the cabin for landing, we took our seats and did up our seatbelts. The view was pretty, it all looked calm.
The pilot then announced, "Get ready, we're landing." 5-6 seconds later, it all began. We were up there, and it was like an elevator, but much more violent, and we all fell down.
The 737 makes an abrupt touchdown on the newly completed landing strip.
The first impact with the runway felt very rough. I said, "What the devil?" And I thought, what happened?
people who were at the back felt the impact, and the plane started to move like this, and things fell down.
From there, we started to feel a very rough impact. Everything happened in seconds.
The plane scrapes along the runway and the landing gear collapses.
It crashed on its nose, and it started to skid. And it skidded and skidded and skidded.
The plane was at an angle, and it started bouncing. I felt three thuds. We ended up in a ditch, which made the plane stop.
After an estimated 100 meters, the plane grinds to a halt.
We veered off track completely, to the right-hand side, and there we balanced. And when we saw the smoke, people got desperate. They started shouting.
I felt the smoke. The oxygen mask started falling. The compartments, the things, everything inside the plane was destroyed. Everyone was getting desperate. I thought that was it. I thought about my family. I said to myself, it was good up until now.
The final report on the reasons behind the crash has not yet been completed, but various accounts have been published.
The pilot said that he lost control of the plane when one of the tires exploded once he touched down on the ground. It was a windy day, so that could have affected the plane's handling as well.
What is known is that the aeroplane ended up in flames close to the perimeter fence of Hauha Airport.
When I heard the air hostess saying, "Leave, leave," my soul forgot my body. It was a very hard moment. It still shocks me.
And everyone began to get out in whatever way they could, and that was it.
I got up and said, "Right, you have to leave." In desperation, I didn't lower myself out. I practically threw myself off. There was an explosion when we were getting out. I shout, "Get out, please," because I was scared that there were still people inside.
Well, I was frightened. I was scared. Because I had been there. I'd been on the plane. The whole thing could have exploded. And thanks to that, we had a chance to get out. And then the whole thing went up in flames.
The fire is worse than it might have been because the plane is still carrying a significant fuel load.
The airline said that refueling was not available at the Hauha airport, and so the plane's tank was quite full. So when the engine hit the ground, it broke, and that caused the explosion and therefore the fire.
Once she has moved a safe distance from the burning 737, Moira quickly gets in touch with her family and sends her mum hard evidence she has escaped from the burning wreck in one piece.
When I got out, the first thing I did was film the plane and send it to my family's WhatsApp group to tell them I was okay. At that moment, my mum got worried. She thought the worst. I told her, "I'm fine. Watch the video. Watch the video." I said, "I'm fine." So that's why I had to take a selfie, because otherwise my mum wasn't going to believe that I was okay.
There were no fatalities in this accident. However, there were reports that 29 of the 150 people on board were taken to hospital. Moira didn't suffer any major medical problems, but the crash has changed her outlook on life.
We should make the most of life. Enjoy each minute with our family, our friends, because you never know the moment death will come to you.
January 2017, London, England. Chef Simon Johnson is heading out for a few days of fun in Thailand. After flying down from Newcastle, he boards British Airways Flight 9 at Heathrow. The plane leaves just after 3 p.m.
The flight was really quiet. I've not noticed anything all the way through the flight. Got my meal, happy with my meals that I got, happy with the service of the cabin crew.
But the peace and quiet comes to a sudden end as the plane gets close to its Bangkok destination.
The captain came over saying, we're getting ready to land. So I thought, right, I'll go to the toilet.
But as Simon waits patiently for his comfort break, he gets a very painful surprise.
Next thing, I get a thud in my back, lower back. And I turn around and this guy's running back to his seat. And I just go straight to the cabin crew and tell them, I've just been assaulted by that gentleman down there. And they said, yeah, we're aware of him, the situation with him already. So I went back to my seat.
As the 777 continues to Bangkok, one of the flight attendants goes to speak to what turns out to be a Russian passenger and gets an aggressive response.
And this is when I undo my belt, my seat belt, and help the cabin crew by restraining this Russian back into his seat. This is where I'm actually just coming up now. We're trying to hold him down, but I've had to come up with him.
After 6 years of dealing with drunks outside of Darlington nightclubs, Simon is in familiar territory.
As an ex-doorman, you could see the situation on the aeroplane was getting out of control.
Other passengers join in to pin down the rowdy Russian.
The guy just so strong, you just can't restrain him.
While bystanders get caught up in the melee.
There's a lady here getting trapped. She's trying to get out. We're trying to hold him down into his seat. He'd broken his seat, plus the 2 seats in front of him. From his pure strength, the one cabin crew member that was left, he ran off, because we said, have you got the handcuffs? I said, do we really need them? I said, yeah, you really need them. So they went for the handcuffs.
As the Mile High Fight Club waits for the restraints to come back, Simon's training kicks in.
When you're in a situation and you've got it under control, you signal the rest of the door staff around the club to say everything's okay. I spot the guy with the camera to say we're okay now. Give him the thumbs up.
The crew come back with their handcuffs, but they aren't enough to tame this Russian bear.
The body restraints were so thin, they didn't really work. It was up and down, and we're just trying to keep him into his seat, but he was just like that all the time. He was just so strong.
By the time the plane makes its final approach, Simon has withdrawn from the fray with back problems.
I had to step out because my back had gone into full spasm, and another gentleman moved into where I was sitting.
With the Soviet strongman under the watchful eyes of the volunteer posse, BA Flight 9 finally puts down in Bangkok.
The pilot said, take your seats, and that's when the Thai police came on, with all guns blaring. But they wouldn't take him off. Now you see the Thai police going off. So it was down to passengers and crew again to take him off. The cabin crew found a litre bottle of Jack Daniels, empty litre bottle of Jack Daniels, I should say, under his seat.
Now unsteady on his feet, Simon is one of the last passengers to disembark. As he leaves, he gets one final glimpse of the belligerent Russian.
Walking off the plane onto that sky bridge bit, we had to physically be lifted over 8 Thai policemen that were on top of the Russian guy. He was still kicking off, even with the handcuffs on and the body restraints. He was on the floor with 8 Thai policemen on top of him.
Every year, more than 3 billion air passengers head for the skies. The vast majority return safely to Earth without incident. But a small number experience life-changing moments they will never forget.
It was like a war zone in the sky.
We hear first-hand accounts from the passengers and pilots who have lived through the most shocking extremes of air travel.
Went on the wildest teacup ride you could ever imagine.
From great escapes...
Run, it's gonna blow.
...to mad moments. And controversial cash demands.
This is now going to cost you £24,000.
To catastrophic crash landings.
The plane just sunk like a stone and crashed into the ground.
In the age of the smartphone, these events are caught on camera as never before.
Awesome.
We reveal exclusive footage never seen on television. So keep your seatbelt fastened for the world's wildest flights. In this episode of World's Wildest Flights, horrendous holdups on the flight from hell.
We're just on the plane, not understanding why we're just sitting there. We're in the middle of a runway. We can see the airport, and we can see that the airport is completely dark. It's just bizarre.
The ups and downs of highway landings.
It's definitely something they don't teach in driving schools, how to avoid a plane.
Holy and terror at over 10,000 feet, halfway across the Pacific Ocean.
The pilot at this point is telling us that it's going to be an emergency landing and that it may be necessary for us to ditch in the ocean. So it's really at this point that I know is quite serious.
October 2016, Chicago, USA. Hard-working Illinois healthcare professionals Peter and Kathy McLeod haven't had a holiday for more than a year. So they've come down to Chicago O'Hare Airport, ready to fly out for a well-earned break.
We were both excited about getting out of Chicago and just kind of relaxing for a week.
We were going on a cruise, on a flight into Miami. Got to the airport on time. I'm very, very nervous when I fly. So we try to leave early just so I can calm down a little, get something to eat, not focus on the flight.
The couple have developed a pre-flight ritual to help settle Kathy's nerves.
We have kind of a routine that we go through whenever we fly together, where I'll take a window seat and she'll sit next to me. Part of our ritual is once we're strapped in and getting ready to, go down the runway for a takeoff, we hold hands.
For some reason that day, I was ultra nervous. And I mentioned that to my husband.
David Schwartz is an aircraft mechanic for FedEx Express, based at O'Hare Airport.
So we clocked out at 14:30 and we started walking through the Jet Bridge Tunnel, which is a glass tunnel about 100 yards long. And out about 300-400 meters is a runway, and we saw a 767 rolling out.
On board the plane, there is no indication of the shocking events about to unfold.
Everything normal, the flight attendants going through their safety instructions, and we were speeding down the runway. And, I could tell we were about, halfway down the runway. We should be lifting off any second.
Then I hear this boom, and it's huge. It's so loud.
The right-hand engine of Flight 383 exploded into flames after the plane had hit a terrifying 150 miles per hour.
I looked at Kathy, she looked at me, and then I turned to my right, and I saw fire.
And I'm thinking, no. And so I look over, and I hear screaming, I see people getting up and running, and then I realize, it's on fire.
Fire was spreading really fast down the side of the plane. And it was moving pretty quick.
I started filming. As you can see, the whole plane was pretty much engulfed in flames on the right side. I'd say about 100 feet in the air, the flames well over the tail of the aircraft, so it was bad. There was fuel everywhere.
The high-pressure turbine disc fractured into at least 4 different sections, and the engine shattered, spraying out high-speed debris. One fragment landed more than half a mile away. Damage from the engine failure causes a fuel leak, feeding a huge fire beneath the right wing.
People were screaming, babies were crying, people were pushing. People on the right side of the wing were all moving towards our side of the wing.
I remember my husband saying, we gotta go, it's gonna blow.
Oh, wow. I felt bad because I was like, if she hadn't married me, she wouldn't be here right now. I thought we weren't gonna get off the plane, that there would be an explosion and that it would just be really, really bad.
July 2017, Long Island, New York. One local resident is reaching for the skies, but he's about to experience a completely new way of coming back down to Earth.
As a kid, I would always dream about flying, so I got my helicopter license first, and subsequently got an airplane license, a seaplane license, and a whole bunch of other ratings through the past 28 years.
And after nearly 3 decades of adventures in aviation, James is set for a short hop out of Brookhaven Airport on Long Island.
I was planning on flying to Long Beach Island, New Jersey, to visit my girlfriend and her family and friends.
It seems like a straightforward start to the trip in his Cessna 206.
Well, I did my power checks and my magneto checks, and I throttled it up a couple times, so I had control over the engine at that time and took off normally.
Thomas Lupski is heading to a job along Sunrise Highway, a busy road between the Hamptons and Brooklyn.
I was on my way to work. I'm a realtor on Long Island, and I had an appointment later on that day, so I was kind of in a rush.
A few hundred feet above Long Island, James becomes aware that his plane is losing power.
I realized that visually, not through instruments, that I wasn't climbing. I realized it felt like I was flat, or even maybe descending. And then I looked at my airspeed. I was like, oh my God, I'm doing 80. I should be doing 150. This is like something that you really don't want to happen.
A bolt has disconnected on his throttle mechanism, so James can't pump enough fuel into the engine.
You know, it's my oldest daughter's birthday that day. So my thought was, oh my God, I hope I'm not gonna die on my daughter's birthday. And then I just thought to myself, I just gotta keep flying the airplane.
James's initial instinct is to head back to base.
And then I started a turn, nice slow left turn back towards the airport. I figured I'd try to get it back to the airport. And as soon as I turned, I realized that that was not going to happen, because now it was downwind, I was descending even faster.
Thomas is making good time along Sunrise Highway.
Normally that road is backed up. After 3:30, 4 o'clock, it gets backed up, so it was middle of the day. I think it was around 1 o'clock. There was no traffic.
As the plane lurches towards the ground, James spots potential salvation in the form of a plowed field.
I'm probably 150 feet above the tree line, so I was gonna land in a field. And oh my God, I'm gonna damage the airplane. I saw right over the tree line, I could see cars, just the tops of the cars. I really literally said, God, just get me over the tree line and I'll figure out what to do from there.
It was just barely made it over the trees. And I realized something was the matter right away.
Sunrise Highway does share some of the key characteristics of an airport landing strip.
I saw it as an advantage because it was a flat surface, and it was wide enough for the wings so I wouldn't hit anything.
But there are other features you wouldn't expect on a conventional runway.
But you have the obstructions of overpasses and wires and signs, and all that stuff was right there when I turned.
I realized something was really wrong when he made a right-hand turn and was flying with the highway.
What the?
I was worried about the cars being under me because I really couldn't see. And then just as I saw the wires, I was thinking, oh my God, wires, because that's one of the things that you worry about when you have to do an emergency landing is wires.
That's when I grabbed my phone and started recording the plane.
James just makes it under the wire, but he isn't safe yet.
I thought to myself, I hope there's nothing else in my way, and sure enough, there's a sign literally right in front of the whole sight picture, so you could see, I forget what it said. It was just like an obstacle course, really.
I couldn't believe what was going on. It was obviously not something you see every day, especially right in front of your car, 30, 40 feet ahead of you. And it was just shocking.
The car went right under my left wing. And I didn't have any more airspeed. I had to land, so.
Holy The wheels hit the ground. You see the smoke when they hit the ground. I saw the traffic sign and the bridge, and I didn't think he was going to make it under that.
Landed pretty smoothly. Then the front wheel hit the crown in the road, and it kind of went like that. And I rolled under the overpass, and I had enough energy where I just pulled off to the side because I knew it was going to really screw up traffic, and that's pretty much the story. That's it.
I just slowed down, gave him plenty of room, just let him do what he had to do. It's definitely something they don't teach in driving schools, how to avoid a plane. Awesome.
James landed safely without any injuries, and there was no damage to his Cessna 206. In fact, he seems to have rather enjoyed his unconventional highway touchdown and subsequent roadside reception.
Everybody was so cool about it. People were yelling and screaming, wanting to take pictures with me as they drove by, cheering, and it just was not the experience that I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be just miserable, negative, and it turned out to be pretty cool.
Later in the program, highway landings from around the states.
Hell no. A plane done landed on goddamn 595.
Including one pilot who was less lucky than James, and the have-a-go hero who prevented a tragedy on Interstate 405. The right-hand engine of American Airlines Flight 383 has exploded into flames shortly before takeoff at Chicago O'Hare Airport. 161 passengers are trapped on board a blazing Boeing 767. But nurse Kathy McLeod's professional instincts kick in.
I felt total calm. I remember saying to passengers, calm down. Don't rush. Don't run. Let's just calm down.
Kathy's a nurse, so she's accustomed to dealing with stressful situations, and she was already kind of like in take charge mode.
But she doesn't get any immediate instructions on what she should be doing.
I didn't hear any communication at all. I didn't hear anything from pilot to flight attendants.
The cabin crew are waiting for confirmation the working left-wing engine has been switched off before opening the escape doors. But passengers on board the flame-engulfed plane are starting to panic.
They were like, open these damn doors and open the door, or pushing them out of the way and trying to open the doors themselves. And there was a gentleman who was trying to open the door over the wing, and he was struggling with it.
Then another passenger steps in to help.
He was like, I got this. And he just kind of picked the door up, and whatever they do with the door just switched open. So I'm like, okay, cool.
Well, there comes the slide.
As soon as an emergency exit opens, passengers scramble to flee the flaming inferno.
And I said, get up, we gotta go.
So I said, okay. I literally reached down and picked up my purse. I thought to pick up my purse. That's kind of how calm I was.
Oh my God.
And we got to the door, and I'm literally pushing her, not trying to push her too hard. And she was like, stop pushing, and then, stay calm mode.
The couple escape down the slide, but unfortunately Kathy falls and injures herself.
And I was lying there, and then that's when I thought, it can blow.
And while I'm trying to help her up, I'm looking underneath the jet, and all I could see was fire. And I was like, you got to get up, we got to go, we got to go, you know, this thing is going to blow up, you know. And she said she couldn't get up.
Not only is the 767 a scorching fireball, but the second engine is not switched off before the passengers started to leave the plane.
People were evacuating on the left side of the aircraft. Unfortunately, the left engine was still running, so that's the side everyone was evacuating. It looked pretty bad from where we were at.
The turbine on the functioning engine is actually pulling Kathy back towards the blistering heat.
I just couldn't move. And my husband came back saying, we gotta go, get up, get up. And I was saying, I can't. The wind is pulling me. And unbeknownst to me, it was the turbines. But to me, in my mind, right at that moment, in real time, it was the wind pulling me.
We struggled, and I finally got her to her feet. And then we started running away from the plane. As soon as we got off the tarmac and into this grassy area, I went down. And Kathy had to stop to come back and get me up. And I told her, no, keep going. And I literally started trying to crawl away from the fire.
As I'm trying to struggle with him to get him up, 2 men came and they grabbed him under his arm and like, we're not gonna leave you, brother. And they took him off.
But as soon as Nurse Kathy knows her husband is out of danger, her attention turns to other passengers still in harm's way.
I said, okay, he's good, he's safe, they're taking him far enough away, I gotta go back.
And then I realized all of a sudden that Kathy was not next to me. And I look up and she's walking back towards the plane.
I went back to this young lady who had been really, really crying.
So I'm sitting there, Kathy, come back here. I can laugh about it now.
I grabbed her and we walked back together.
There was still this fear that there was gonna be an explosion.
The plane continues to burn, but the fire crews are on the scene within 3 minutes of the engine failure.
Fire trucks are starting to arrive from the rear of the aircraft. There's one already there and there's another one behind it. The flames are getting bigger, spreading a little more into the aircraft. 2 more trucks arrived. Police are arriving on the scene. There's probably 100 people on the grass on the tarmac next to the airplane, kind of running away. They're spraying the foam from the front of the aircraft onto the flames now. 2 more fire trucks arrive from the rear of the aircraft. It's starting to become like a grayish white smoke as they put the flames out. More trucks are coming from another taxiway. Seems like everybody got off the aircraft at this point. And they're still fighting the flames on the right side. So at this point, there's about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trucks around the aircraft putting the fire out.
The passengers gather on a grassy bank a few hundred feet from the plane and watch the airport rescue team make the scene safe.
And then I went to where Peter was, and we were taken into an ambulance.
Peter fractured his heel, one of 20 injuries suffered by the passengers that day. But it could have been so much worse if the plane had actually taken off.
We were truly blessed, as were the other 170 or so people, to get off that plane. Because if that pilot had went just a couple of more seconds and lifted off, then it would have been a totally different story. You know, I wouldn't want to think about what would have happened, but...
Oh my God, this is insane, this is insane.
Both of the McLeods have struggled to come to terms with the events of that day, and Kathy in particular has a real fear of flying.
I didn't want to see anything about airplanes, I didn't want to go on an airplane, I didn't want to look up in the air and see one.
But their marriage is stronger than ever.
I've learned a lot about my wife. I already knew that I could always count on her, but she was really brave.
February 2014, London, England. Nicole Martins has flown in from Portugal to run a stand at an exhibition of sports equipment. Husband Joa decided to come along for the ride, and after a successful trip, the two of them are heading home. It's Valentine's Day, so the couple are planning to celebrate after the short flight back.
We actually were supposed to get back to Porto at nighttime, so we figured when we got back, we'd go out in Porto and have a drink, be a little romantic.
Nicole and Joa are flying out from Stansted Airport on Ryanair flight 8347. They arrive in good time for the scheduled departure at 8:25 in the evening.
So we get there 15 minutes before 6 o'clock, so we were right on time, you know. So we had, then we proceed to the check-in area. We did it normally with no problems or whatsoever. And then we had like 2 hours before the boarding.
We got something to eat and then went to our boarding gate. And we probably waited half an hour. The line wasn't moving, and then they randomly just changed our gate.
This is a minor inconvenience, but it's just the first of a string of setbacks for the couple as they try to make their way home from London.
We were waiting online, and then when we were supposed to board and the line's not moving, people start to be like, well, we were just at one gate, you made us come to another gate, what's going on? And that's when they started saying that the plane was delayed due to bad weather conditions or wind or something like that.
After 2 hours, a new information came up. They told us that the plane had to stop in Birmingham for refuel.
And that's when they finally said, okay, so we don't really have a boarding time for you guys, just go have a coffee, watch the boards, and wait for a new time to board.
The new boarding time finally comes up at about 11:45, just over 3 hours after the scheduled departure time.
So we went back to check in to get online to board the plane, which took probably another 15 minutes to get on the plane.
The weary Ryanair customers finally board the plane nearly 4 hours late. Valentine's Day is over, and Joa and Nicole's relationship with the airline has hit a rocky patch. But the problems are only just beginning for the unlucky passengers of Flight 8347. July 2015, Hong Kong, China. Young Brit Ethan Williams is on a once-in-a-lifetime round-the-world trip. After a spell in Asia, he is flying out from Hong Kong across the Pacific Ocean to the United States.
Kind of been on quite a few flights over that trip, so it was quite kind of routine. I had my little setup, had my passport, my ticket in it, ready to show. Got sat in, settled down and ready to take off. It was a nice takeoff. You could see lots of the city out the window, and it's a nice smooth takeoff and nothing out of the ordinary.
Cathay Pacific Flight CX-884 is an overnighter, so Ethan soon dozes off, but comes round after about 8 hours.
I got up and went to the bathroom, and it was on my way out of the bathroom, I kind of looked around and saw that there wasn't air hostesses or anything, and there was a beeping sound going from one of the doors. I started to walk back to my seat, and it was when I saw someone rushing towards the front of the plane, and then I think there was a call for the lead flight attendant to go to the cockpit. And at that point I knew that something wasn't quite right.
The young Brit decides to film the disturbing drama now unfolding on board the Boeing 777.
And I actually kind of took out my phone and started recording it more as maybe a distraction to what was happening, and just, something to do whilst it was waiting, and then it kind of developed in more and just continued recording. Okay, so I'm not sure what's happening, but there's something going on this flight. All the flight attendants are running around like crazy. There's warning signs going off. Hopefully it's nothing too bad, and I think it'll be alright, but I don't know, we'll see.
The cabin crew have smelt smoke, but cannot identify the source of the problem.
What is smoke? It's something that has to do with fire, right? So we can manage a fire that we can see and know where it's coming from. We can't manage a fire that we cannot figure out where it's coming from. So they have all of these passengers on board, and a smoke situation that they cannot control. They have to land the airplane.
The pilot knows that she has smoke in the cabin but can't access the fire, so she has to prepare for the worst.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to do an emergency landing, and it might be necessary for us to make an emergency ditching.
Yeah, so the pilot at this point is telling us that it's going to be an emergency landing and that it may be necessary for us to ditch in the ocean. So it's really at this point that I know it is quite serious, and obviously the ditching in the ocean's the thing that I know is not going to end well. So at this point we are pretty much halfway across the flight, so we're what I perceive to be the middle point, and there was nothing but ocean around us. I remember actually looking on the in-flight map to see where we were, and yeah, there was nothing but ocean around us.
And a nighttime sea landing on the icy waters of the North Pacific is not a comforting prospect.
My understanding of landing into the ocean was it was more of a crash as opposed to a landing.
It's estimated that 30 commercial aircraft have ditched at sea over the last 40 years, with a fatality rate of more than a third and over 300 deaths.
Pilots are not experts at landing in a sea state. We're just not. We know that we have to land perpendicular to a sea squall, but we do not practice landing on water because that is so far-fetched.
And the odds of coming out alive from a forced water landing in the low temperatures of the North Pacific are even lower.
I kind of knew if you did survive the initial impact on the ocean, that once you got out of the plane, the water was still going to be very cold and you're likely to freeze to death before anyone could actually get to you to rescue you.
So Ethan starts to plan his survival strategy.
So I actually picked up the safety information card in front of me and started reading through everything. I was definitely planning my exit route. I was next to one of the doors. I knew exactly how I was getting off that plane and I was ready to if I needed to.
With fire raging uncontrollably in an inaccessible area of the plane, the crew start to run through the emergency procedures for a forced sea landing.
I think at this point the air hostess who's actually stood right beside me, she's telling us to get our life vest out from underneath the seat. In my mind it was going to be kind of a fabric mesh that I was feeling for, but when I was actually feeling it was a plastic box. I had to pull this box and break it down, and within that was a vacuum sealed actual life vest which I had to tear open. It was kind of a bit of a surreal experience tearing it open, because once you ruptured that seal that it was you'd use that life vest and it was going to be going on you, and it was very strange to actually be pulling it over your head, and then when you look around and you see everyone else sat there in these bright yellow life vests as well.
Ethan Williams is flying thousands of feet above the icy waters of the Pacific Ocean. As smoke spreads into the cabin, the crew prepare the 276 passengers for the terrifying prospect of a forced landing on open sea in the dead of the night.
When you hear the face, put your hands on the leg, and then
14th of February 2014. Young Portuguese couple Nicole and Joa's Valentine's Day plans have been ruined by a delay to their Ryanair flight from Stansted to their hometown of Porto. The couple finally boarded their plane just after midnight, 4 hours late.
Everybody took their seats, strapped in, just regular getting on a plane and putting your seatbelts on and telling us what the rules and regulations are. And then we just sat there for a while, probably like an hour, and everyone's like, are we gonna leave? Or are we just gonna sit here? What's going on? Why is there delay?
Excuse me.
The passengers on the 737 can only hold tight and wait for something to happen.
People started demanding that the captain say something like, what's going on? Are we taking off today? Are we just gonna sit here? How long is this gonna take? What's going on?
Finally, the captain has some good news. The passengers will be allowed to return to the terminal building.
We've now contacted our handling agent for the aircraft now so they can open up the arrivals door. Once they're here, you'll be free to leave the aircraft, take your bag and go through arrivals.
But even this is a false dawn. The passengers are actually forced to stay on the plane in lockdown conditions.
We are not allowed as well to use the toilets, okay? And we are not also allowed to buy any food or drinks.
What do we do with the kids?
What about kids? There's kids on here.
There's an infant baby. There's little babies on board.
So basically, we're in the middle of a runway. We can see the airport, and we can see that the airport is completely dark. There's no ground crew anywhere. There's no lights.
Then the pilot pops up with another announcement.
The captain finally said that he was waiting to be refueled. And we thought that was pretty funny because one of the excuses they gave us in the airport about all the delays we were having besides weather condition was that our plane had to go stop in Birmingham to be refueled. It's just bizarre. So then we kind of like were just on the plane. Just everyone was just not understanding why we're just sitting there.
Não há nada para comer ou para beber? Hã? Isto não é?
Meanwhile, the cabin crew launch a work to rule.
I believe there was two stewards, and only one of them was really responding to us. And it got to a point where we were like, are you going to do anything? Can we pay for food? Can you at least give us a glass of water? And he just said, well, now I can't really do anything because my shift is actually over. So we were like, so you're just gonna stand there and look at us? And he's like, yeah. And that's literally what he did. He just stood by the captain or the pilot's door and just stopped talking to us. So just like staring at us.
Ryanair say that they provided water to passengers. At 3:15 in the morning, nearly 7 hours after the plane was scheduled to leave, and after 3 hours in confined conditions on an airplane, the passengers decided to alert the authorities.
We started calling the police because we really didn't know what to do.
I think the first few times they didn't believe us.
What did the police say to you? What did you tell him that the airline's been lying to us the whole time? Did they just give us excuses?
The police said the same thing. They've been telling us that it's for security.
It's not security reasons though. They can't keep us on an airplane for over 3 hours.
Because they probably thought it was a prank. They really didn't believe that like people were stuck on a plane at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Finally, somebody got through and they said, okay, fine, we're gonna send a car over to the airport. Although this seems ridiculous, we're gonna send somebody just so you guys stop calling.
Police. That's the police outside.
Ryanair say that the pilot also contacted police. They eventually arrive at 3:25 and seem nearly as bewildered as the passengers about what is going on.
2 policemen came onto the plane and started telling us like, okay, so we had to break into the airport to get over here to this plane, but we do understand that the airport is closed. And if we can't get answers within the next, I think it was like 15 minutes or something, we're gonna have to break into the airport to let you guys in.
The police had contacted the duty manager at Stansted Airport.
Giving them a time frame.
And say that they promised to return the passengers to the terminal by one means or another in the next 15 minutes.
We're going to let you go back into the terminal building itself, into a restricted area which is airside, so you can get to the toilet, you can get refreshments. Unfortunately, there's nowhere actually open.
The passengers are still not able to escape from the airport as a whole.
Give you a chance to stretch your legs.
By hook or crook, the police are able to get the passengers back into the terminal.
So when we got into the airport, we heard like the alarms going off from them breaking into the airport. So it was kind of weird. It was a bizarre situation.
Does anybody know what time it is?
It is. No, it says on my thing. It says on my tablet. It's 10 to 4.
I can't really. Like these.
Yep, must I?
Somebody came and gave us like vouchers to go get another coffee and like go into the actual airport where there was like one coffee place open still, because everything else in the airport was basically closed, and it was just a weird vibe to be in an airport that was completely empty and just waiting to see when we'd be able to leave again.
So we were sitting in the cafe right next to the board, waiting for informations about our next flight, because we were told to do this, but that information never came up.
Our flight wasn't on any board, so we went to the information desks to ask, you know, what's going on with our flight, and they were like, your flight took off already.
The Ryanair flight had left at 7:50, leaving several of the original passengers behind at Stansted. They had to leave the departure lounge and check in on a new Ryanair flight at a high cost in duty-free purchases.
There are passengers with us that had bought whiskey, chocolates in the duty-free shop. So they are not allowed to take this with them again in this check-in phase. So they have to leave what they bought before at this check-in gate.
We got on the plane probably around 8 o'clock, took off at like 10 o'clock in the morning. So we were on the plane for another 2 hours, and then took off and got to Porto at about 12 o'clock in the afternoon.
Joa and Nicole finally arrived back in Porto about 13 hours later than scheduled. Their romantic celebrations are ruined, and they can't raise a glass for Valentine's Day for another 12 months. Ryanair apologises to the passengers on the flight, but explains that the problems were caused by weather disruption and a subsequent fueling delay, and that their pilot requested access for the passengers to the terminal from their local handling company Swissport after they had been on the plane for 2 hours. Swissport said they regretted the delay to passengers and that they were disappointed they fell short of their usual high standards. The couple heard nothing from the airline and were only able to get their money back with the involvement of an online compensation company.
The only people that helped us was AirHelp. They refunded our tickets. Ryanair did not contact us at all. Didn't apologize, didn't give us a refund, didn't try to do anything whatsoever.
June 2017, Los Angeles, California. A new chapter is written in one of the wildest traditions of American aviation. It's estimated that there are over a dozen aircraft landings on US highways every year. In fact, there is even an urban myth that freeways in America are built with a straight mile in every 5, so they can be used as emergency landing strips.
Hell no.
Some pilots land safely.
A plane done landed on goddamn 595.
Some pilots miss the road altogether. But one incident near Los Angeles on Freeway 405 stands out because of the bravery of one man. It's just after 9 a.m. on Friday, June the 30th, 2017. Off-duty fire captain John Meffert is heading home after a 24-hour shift.
I was on my phone with my father, and I just looked out, and here I see this plane very low, and I tell him, I'm like, wow, this plane's like super low.
The plane's right engine has failed. It crashes out of the sky and collides with John's vehicle.
So I literally had the plane come across the front of my car, and then I clipped the left wing, and then I spun the plane flat all the way across the freeway.
The firefighter watches in horror as the Cessna 310 bursts into flames on the tarmac.
I was thinking already, like, there's no way someone's going to be alive in that plane, especially with a horrific explosion.
He leaps out of his car and runs to help.
I'm looking at a plane that is on fire. Both sections of the wing are in flame.
Yo, move back, because if there's gasoline, you don't want nothing to explode, any reserve tanks or anything.
And as I'm briskly running initially, but seeing the passenger's head pop up really made me run much faster. And it turns out to be the pilot's wife, and made my way to her, and I got her back to the median and came back and grabbed him and pulled him out of the plane.
Just breathe, it's okay, you're okay.
Both of the passengers are now recovering from their injuries, but it's all in a day's work for the humble hero of Highway 405.
I mean, it's the work I do, so, you know, the credit is very nice, but I don't look at it as like I did anything extraordinary. It's something that I think anybody in the right position would probably help and stop to do. And I feel very grateful that I was able to render aid, and then they're safe and alive.
The 29th of July 2015. A fire has broken out in a cooling fan in an inaccessible cargo compartment on a Boeing 777 midway between Hong Kong and Los Angeles. There is smoke in the cabin, and the captain has told the passengers to put on their life jackets in preparation for an emergency sea landing. Ethan Williams is recording the whole terrifying ordeal on his phone.
So it was actually dark, and I remember looking outside of the window, and you could see that they were jettisoning some fuel out of the side of the wing.
The forces on the landing gear of a plane are much greater during touchdown than takeoff. So most commercial aircraft are not designed to withstand the weight of a fully fueled plane when they come into land.
The wing holds all the fuel. And that structure is set up to a specific weight and bending motion. Well, with that much fuel, landing that airplane, it's too much for that. You must get rid of that gas. If you have to either dump it or burn it off. So that's an absolute requirement.
When I saw the fuel coming out, I'd say it kind of reaffirmed that we were in a real situation, and I realised it was going to be quite serious. Yeah, I think we were sat there at this point for maybe kind of around about 10-15 minutes, and then the pilots come over the radio, and you could definitely tell she was a lot calmer in her voice.
And we are anticipating a normal landing, so I want to reiterate it will be a normal landing.
The pilot tells the passengers they are setting course for a US military airbase on Shemya, a tiny weather-beaten island more than 1,000 miles from Anchorage in Alaska.
I remember not knowing where this place was, and just thinking, right, great, it's a land, doesn't really matter where it is, what it is, as long as we can land normally there. We started to look for where this island was on the map, and you could kind of see this island kind of appearing and getting a bit closer. It was kind of just a relief to know that there was actually some land around us, somewhere we could potentially have a normal landing.
So that's really good news, guys. We're diverting to Shemya, and it's going to be a normal landing, not a water landing. So that's really good news.
This is a huge relief to Ethan, but also a big surprise. He hasn't expected that a flight from Hong Kong to Los Angeles will go anywhere near Alaska. The reason it did is mainly because of the way flight paths are plotted to account for the curvature of the globe.
If you look at a map, a flat map, and you draw a line between Hong Kong and Los Angeles, you go straight across the water and it's like, that makes sense. But you look at a globe and you draw a straight line from Hong Kong to LA, and then you take it off the globe and then flatten it out, it's an arch. So it's called the Great Circle Route. If you looked at that on the Great Circle, it's not that far from Alaska in the first place.
The plane makes its final approach to the remote Alaskan island.
At this point, we're actually going down quite fast. I can feel the air pressure changing, my ears are popping quite severely. It's actually quite painful.
Flight CX-884 is still overburdened with fuel, so the captain prepares the passengers for a potentially perilous landing.
Can you hear the face?
So as we were coming down, it was still pretty dark. You couldn't really see much of anything out the window. I think they told us that there was a chance of the brakes catching fire because of how heavy we were on landing. When we landed, it was quite a rough impact. We landed quite hard, and it was actually very heavy on the brakes as well. And it was just an absolute mass of lights flashing towards us and rushing around.
The brakes and the rest of the plane survive. But it's not over yet. The 276 passengers are now stranded on a 2x4 mile island at a largely inactive military airbase with nothing to do and nowhere to go but the plane itself. Ethan sets about editing a video of his flight from hell.
So I thought, well, I can kill this time. I have my laptop with me, I have the footage. Let's start editing it and finalise the video within a couple of hours of being there.
Ethan and the rest of the passengers then fly the 1,500 miles to Anchorage in the same plane they just limped into the airport on 6 hours earlier.
That we didn't know what the issue was on the plane, and then they were still flying on the same plane. And actually when we took off, you could smell some burning. And then when we finally landed in Anchorage in Alaska, it was, okay, right, we're done with this plane, let's get off it. And it was a huge sense of relief to kind of be off and at least somewhere where we were back on relatively normal land.
The weary passengers board a new plane, then finally arrive in Los Angeles some 17 hours later than planned. After touchdown, Ethan posts online the video of flight CX-884 that he edited in Shemya Airport and creates an internet sensation.
I think within the first few hours it had a couple of 100,000 views, and it shortly progressed over that time, so I think it's now around about 4.5 million views.
We've landed. Yes. Down.
Every year, more than 3 billion air passengers head for the skies. The vast majority return safely to Earth without incident. But a small number experience life-changing moments they will never forget.
It was like a war zone in the sky.
We hear first-hand accounts from the passengers and pilots who have lived through the most shocking extremes of air travel.
Went on the wildest teacup ride you could ever imagine.
From great escapes...
Run, it's gonna blow.
...to mad moments. And highway robbery...
This is now going to cost you £24,000.
...to highway landings.
Holy...
It's definitely something I don't teach in driving schools, how to avoid a plane.
In the age of the smartphone, these events are caught on camera as never before.
Awesome.
We reveal exclusive footage never seen on television. So keep your seatbelts fastened for the world's wildest flights. In this episode of World's Wildest Flights, the 77-year-old first-time flyer who takes over the controls.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
I didn't know how to land an aircraft. I'd never done it.
Have you done any flying before? Negative.
70 minutes of bone-shaking turbulence.
So I'm wondering, how much can this plane stand? I mean, it's really, really, really shaking.
Terror at 4,000 feet for a young Canadian couple.
He said, we're not getting any response from the controls. I was like, no, this is not happening.
The passenger who spent a penny, which cost him his flight.
You know, it was just kind of get your thing, let's go. So I'm asking, am I going to be able to return on the plane?
And a crash landing at sea in the shark-infested Pacific Ocean.
So we hit the water 50, 60 miles an hour, and that's how I got the gash in my head and bleeding all over the place.
October 2013, Lincolnshire, England. 77-year-old John Wildest has flown the 50 miles southeast from Sandtoft Airport to Skegness with a pal who's a pilot. The two of them spent the day at the local Butlins holiday camp with his friend's cousin, and they're about to head home from the nearby airfield just as the light is falling.
About 5:30, we started engines. Well, he did. And we took off, did a circle round Butlins to wave to his cousin, and then set course for Sandtoft.
After about 15 minutes, the pilot begins to feel unwell.
He suddenly started hyperventilating. And I said to him, "What's up, mate?" And he says, "I don't know, I feel sick." I said, "Should we go somewhere else? Should we land somewhere else and divert?" He said, "No, I'm all right now."
John has never actually flown a plane, but his mate asked him to steer the Cessna 172 while he sorts himself out.
I was trying to concentrate on keeping us steady.
The pilot positions the GPS device in front of John to show him the direction he should be steering the plane in to get back to Sandtoft.
Unfortunately, the sun was setting in that area and we were heading right into it. So all I could see was a black little box on the dashboard, and I couldn't really see. I just make out the arrow which gives the direction, and I followed that.
At nearby Humberside Airport, John Cameron is on air traffic control duties.
So it was getting towards the end of the shift, about 6:30 in the evening. For some reason, it was actually a quieter evening than I expected.
A15, the helicopter traffic was just passing the north bank of the river.
And I got 2/3 of the way through the shift, so just waiting for the last third of the shift just to wind down and just sort of finish off with the last aircraft of the day.
Over 1,000 feet up, the pilot has taken a turn for the worse.
So we chatted a bit, and then he started hyperventilating again. And I said, "You all right, mate?" And he just went out completely, and his head slumped back on the seat, and that was it. He was unconscious. And I kept tugging him and said, "Mate, you wake, mate." Nothing. And that's when I realised I was on my own.
Even though John has never actually piloted an aircraft, he does remember how to use the radio.
So I pressed the button, the RTT, and said, "Mayday, mayday, mayday." because I've read the books, as you know.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
The three words, and generally when you get a mayday call, you're going to get a pilot telling you where he is, what he's doing, what's happening, how many people on board, but it was just three words, and then the transmission ended.
And he came back to me and says, unit calling, what is your problem? So then pressed again and said,
I'm a passenger. My pilot seems to be unconscious, but I'm not a pilot. Over.
As soon as I heard the words, he's not the pilot, my mind is just exploding into thinking, how many people are on board the aircraft? Is there somebody on board the aircraft? Is this a joke?
He came back to me and I explained the position and that I was airborne and that we were heading for Sandtop.
Have you done any flying before? Negative.
You see professional pilots damage their aircraft on a regular basis, and the time frame, it's getting near dark. All these small amounts added up to a huge possibility that he's not going to actually be able to sort of survive the next half an hour.
February 2017, Vancouver, Canada. Anthony Bordignon fell for Catherine Wareham, the girl next door. Well, a near neighbour anyway.
She moved in across the street from me, and we got to know each other because we both had little children.
Yeah, we became friends and we had play dates with the kids and stuff like that, and yeah, eventually it grew into liking each other.
They've been dating for 2 years and do agree on most things, but there's one topic they don't see eye to eye about. Anthony's other great obsession.
I've always had a passion for doing fun and interesting things, and so for me, I was always excited to jump on that opportunity to get into flying. But Catherine is a little bit nervous when it comes to flying.
Yes, petrified. I don't like it whatsoever.
Catherine has only ever flown with Anthony once before, but there's something in the air and he's determined to get her reaching for the skies again.
She knew it was a big part of my life, so when I mentioned to her, Catherine, we're gonna go flying, are you okay? She was quite reluctant, but at the same time, she was willing to say okay, but very reluctantly.
He had to kind of persuade me because obviously I was really, really scared, but I knew it was really important to him because he's been doing flying for a long time, like since before I even met him. So I wanted to kind of do that for him.
Catherine and Anthony arrive at the airport, but it's a rather tense time for the young lovebirds.
So I had so many things on my mind that I was stressed. But mostly I was focused on, okay, I'm taking Catherine flying in a new aircraft for the first time. Let's make sure everything goes safely. Lining up.
Commercially, I had flown, I think, maybe once or twice, but in a small little plane like that, I had only ever gone up with him once. So I was scared.
The plane is an extremely small aircraft. We have barely enough room to breathe, quite frankly. And so it's nerve-wracking.
But they squeeze up and prepare for takeoff.
I was just scared for that initial feeling of being off of the ground and wondering if something's going to go wrong. You kind of always just think about the worst case scenario.
We were probably flying for about 8 to 10 minutes, and we fly from the airport into a general practice area is what they call it, where you're free to fly almost whichever way you want within certain guidelines.
And then the Diamond DV-20 suddenly loses power.
He said something along the lines of,
I'm not getting any response out of the controls here.
And immediately I was like, no, this is not happening.
I think you were saying a little prayer at that point. So she's looking at me thinking, what's going on? Is this normal? And at that point, I knew she was confused and she was alarmed and uneasy. And I said, can you grab the check lift from the side? And I said, you know what? We're going to have to land in a field, so don't panic. And next one. We might have to land in the field. I'm not even kidding you.
This one, forced landing. Car P on.
Okay. Got it.
I didn't really have a thought that I was gonna die, but just the thought of, like I said, crashing into a field and potentially breaking my legs. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was just very, very scared.
Yes.
Determine wind direction.
Got it. And she began reading through the checklist.
I felt sick, I think. Look at the look on my face. Although inside I was burning with fear, I just tried to remain as calm as I could.
Then Anthony has some good news.
Oh, we're getting some response.
You're lying.
What's go on? I said to her, oh, we're getting some response. And at that moment, she goes, you're lying. At that moment, I thought she was cluing in. In fact, she wasn't.
How can you not understand what he's saying?
And at that moment, she screamed, so she was in fear of her life. And so that was an exciting moment because I knew she had no idea at that point.
I thought he was trying to make me feel better because I was literally so scared.
With the aircraft dropping through the sky, Catherine continues to work through the emergency checklist.
I followed the instructions as best as I could. At one point, I think 11, 12, and 13 on the list, he had those little hints thrown in there about check if flight ring is engaged.
Initiate ring engagement process, follow steps 11 to 14.
Okay, go for it.
It just all sounds like plane jargon. Like it was just kind of like, it flew right over my head, literally, like right over my head.
Okay, got it.
It isn't until item number 14 on the list that the penny finally drops.
What's go on?
Does the pass?
Go on, please.
I hate you!
That meant I love you.
Will the pilot in command love the passenger forever? Check.
Ew.
Will you marry the pilot?
My crying face is not very sweet. I can't even remember what it said for sure, or the passenger marry the pilot in command, and I was just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this.
The whole crash landing scare was an elaborate scam by Anthony to pop the question to Catherine. He got a suitable response.
Such an idiot.
Is that a yes?
I love you so much.
Called him an idiot. Yeah, I accepted by calling him an idiot and shaking my head and acting completely confused. It was not your typical proposal.
I grabbed the ring from the pocket and she just took the ring and that was it. The deal was done.
He's not the most romantic of guys. The flight back was definitely emotional. I was still scared, like I could feel my legs shaking for like the entire ride home. And I just wanted to get back onto land. I wanted to be able to hug him and give him a kiss and, really experience the experience of being proposed to.
The couple come back down to earth for a heavenly ceremony.
We had a small wedding in Vancouver and it was simple and it was beautiful and it was a great day.
It was very nice, very beautiful. The weather cooperated too, so I was happy.
But one aspect of their relationship still hasn't hit the heights since that unorthodox proposal.
Have I flown with Anthony since? No. Hard no.
So she hasn't given it a definitive no. There may be a day where she comes flying with me again, but I think it'll be a while before I earn her trust back.
So cute.
John Wildest is the only passenger in a Cessna 172 flying 2,000 feet above Lincolnshire in England.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
The pilot has passed out and is now completely unresponsive. So John, who has never flown a plane before, is doing all he can just to keep the Cessna on an even keel.
I didn't know how to land an aircraft, I'd never done it, and I was just hoping beyond hope that it was going to come to.
John Cameron of Humberside Air Traffic Control is doing his best to keep John airborne.
Going through my mind is how can we minimise any damage that could happen if the plane was to suddenly go out of control. But the sooner we got him down on the ground, the better it would be.
The authorities decide to divert the flight to Humberside, the largest airport in the vicinity. A local landmark guides in the first-time pilot.
So he said, do you know whereabouts you are? I said, yeah, I can see the Humber Bridge from here. And by this time it was lit up by the setting sun. So I set course for there, headed towards it. And he said, when you get there, we'll guide you back to the airport.
He called the Humber Bridge and then he turned right, told him to follow the bypass down, and then he was able to pick up the runway lights for the main runway.
The airport calls in flight instructor Roy Murray.
I was told, is it possible you can come back to the airport? We have a bit of an incident. There's a lad that's flying an aeroplane. He's never flown before, and we've got to get him back home on the ground. So I said, OK. And then we started.
My name's Roy Murray. I'm a chief flying instructor. We're going to get you down onto the ground, OK?
That'll be very helpful. Thank you very much.
He asked me, had I flown before? And I said, no, this is the first time I've actually held the controls. I'm not a pilot, I've got no licence, I've never taken any lessons.
So there's no problem, John, we'll get you down on the ground. Let's just do what I ask you to do, and then we'll see how we go on from there.
At about 7 o'clock, the Cessna 172 approaches Humberside Airport.
The light itself was fading. When John came into a view of the airport, we thought, great, hopefully 5 minutes we'll be able to get it done and dusted, be able to walk away and get help to the pilots as soon as possible.
It's easiest to land an aircraft into the wind, so the plane will naturally slow as it touches down and will not be blown off course by a crosswind. Runway 26 faces in the best direction to take advantage of the weather conditions as dusk falls.
So what we're going to do, we're going to turn you to the right, and then you're going to land on runway 26. Roger.
Runway 26 was a nice option. There'd be a nice headwind of 12 to 15 knots. The aircraft would have been able to slow down.
There are only two problems. It's a short runway, only 800 metres long.
The 26 runway is notoriously short, and it came in very, very high and was heading towards the ground quite steeply.
And this particular landing strip is not lit.
Unfortunately, because it was dark, I couldn't outline the difference between the runway itself and the grass and the ground. I just couldn't see it. In fact, I was over it, and I just suddenly caught sight of the runway underneath me.
It just looks like you've overshot it a little bit, so what we're going to do, we're going to take you round again.
I told him to climb away again, pull the throttle in, pull the stick back, and climb back up again.
John has failed in his first attempt to bring his plane safely down to Earth. And as the sun slowly sets over the Lincolnshire landscape, it's only going to get harder.
Yeah, there was a small amount of daylight for him to land on. He was just trying to get him in onto the runway, but he said it was too dark. So the anxiety levels are getting raised. The longer an incident goes on, the more likely something is going to go wrong.
April 2017, Atlanta, USA. Keema Hamilton is heading back to Wisconsin after a visit to his mum. It's a busy day at the airport and his flight is held up. After about half an hour on the runway, the Milwaukee resident begins to hear the call of nature.
I started feeling it coming, but still, was trying to wait for the plane to take off and level out so I could use the restroom.
Unfortunately, the urge just gets stronger when the captain makes an announcement as the plane waits in line.
The pilot got on the intercom and said that we were like third in line to take off, which said to my bladder that it's going to take a little longer than I'd considered.
And that's when Keema makes his first bid to relieve the mounting pressure.
The plane wasn't moving, and I approached the door. The flight attendant, she told me that I could go, but it would be, that we would lose our spot in line. So I went and sat back down initially.
But after another 10 minutes or so on the runway, Keema is fit to burst.
It's an emergency at this stage now. I'm no longer able to hold it. So I approached the door again, and at this time I'm using language like emergency, right? This is, I'm sorry, ma'am, this is an emergency. So she, gestured to kind of open the door for me to use the restroom, and it was with some degree of reluctance, but at that point couldn't necessarily emotionally connect to that.
Keema makes it to the conveniences. But the inconvenience for him really starts after he gets back to his seat.
Like I sat down, and then The pilot came on the intercom to say that we were now returning to the gate to remove a passenger.
Back at the terminal, Kima realizes to his horror, he is that passenger.
It was a Delta employee that got onto the plane, and he asked me to get my belongings to get off of the plane. And I initially was just asking why.
I purchased this ticket. Can you help me understand why? We're going to discuss this outside. Not here, outside. Follow me, please. Follow me. I need more information, sir. I haven't done anything. I paid for this ticket, and I actually have to get home. So I'm going to share this. We're not going to discuss this right now. I'm not really clear on why I'm being asked to leave this plane.
It was just kind of get your thing, let's go. So I'm asking, once we understand that this is a big misunderstanding, am I going to be able to return on the plane? And at this point, I still haven't been able to explain what was going on.
We're not going to discuss this right here outside. I'm going to ask you one more time. Please.
But it was never allowed, that opportunity. So the first Delta employee left the plane, and that's when the second gentleman Delta employee came on. And we had we'll call it a conversation, because we both had an opportunity to speak, but I don't know if what I was saying was ever received.
Right. And I'm completely open to talk about indicating. I think a lot can happen in that space. Right. This is not one of these scenarios where it's like forcing you on there every level. I'm going to talk to you.
So I'm not being aggressive. As a matter of fact, I'm making a conscious effort not to be threatening. If I raise my voice at any point in that exchange, Delta's removing an unruly customer, and my pictures on TV with that narrative on it, and we keep it moving. Black man's loud on the plane.
I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. How is this helping me by not letting me get to where I'm trying to go the time that I need to be there? How is this helping me?
Eventually, Kima's need to spend a penny cost him his flight home.
Once the second Delta employee left, they decided to deboard the entire plane.
The feds are waiting for the part-time DJ as he leaves the aircraft.
There were the agents there to interview me about what was taking place or what was happening. The agent said that he came to arrest me.
The FBI quickly decide that no crimes have been committed, but Delta won't let Kima back on the flight. He eventually flies home with Southwest Airlines about 10 hours later than his scheduled departure. Delta Airlines said, "Our flight crews are extensively trained to ensure the safety and security of all customers. It is imperative that passengers comply with crew instructions during all phases of flight, especially at the critical points of takeoff and landing." Kima is now pursuing legal action against the airline.
I have had to replay it a lot, and I don't know if there's anything I'd do different. When you pull back layers, I had to use it was an emergency restroom, and the plane wasn't moving.
77-year-old John Wildest is the only passenger in a Cessna 172 flying high over Humberside in the northeast of England. His friend, the pilot, is completely unresponsive, so John has taken over the controls and tried unsuccessfully to land the plane at Humberside Airport. He has never flown before. Now darkness is setting in, and to make matters worse, John is struggling to see the instruments in the growing gloom.
I didn't know where the dashboard light was, and I couldn't see the dashboard at all.
Yeah, any idea how to turn the lights on the dashboard, are there?
As every aircraft can be configured differently, the team on the ground don't know where the light switch will be, and a mistake could be fatal.
We're to tell him the light switch is in the top right-hand corner, the console, and he flicks the wrong switch and it knocks all the electrics off. Then we are back in the Stone Age with regard to how much help we can actually provide to John.
Are you in a position to tell us what your speedometer's saying? Sorry, I can't see it at all now.
So the only information John has is what he can see out of the windscreen.
I didn't know what height I was, I didn't know what my speed was, and I didn't know if I was straight and level. It's like driving down a motorway with no lights on the dashboard and trying to keep to a set speed. You just can't do it.
But the novice pilot has no choice but to attempt a second landing. This time, he'll be aiming for Humberside Airport's main runway.
It's getting very, very dark. So I thought we've got to get him round on the runway, that's where all the lights are.
One thing has finally swung in John's favour. As night falls, the weather conditions which made this runway a death trap just a short time earlier are starting to change.
The wind will die off slightly as it gets darker, so the crosswind wasn't going to be as bad for the main runway.
The first-time flyer lines up on runway 20.
They brought me round and they said, "Can you see the approach lights?" I said, "Yes, I can."
Turn right, turn left, bring the power back a little bit, put the aircraft in a little nose down a little bit to control your rate of descent.
And I approached it and they were telling me to get down, you're too fast. So I took the throttle in a bit.
It was coming in too high and too fast.
I think you better go round, John. Full power and go round.
Roy aborts John's second landing attempt.
So I pulled back on the yoke and went a bit higher and round.
John has now been flying solo for over an hour, and there is a new worry for the team at the airport.
One of the things on the back of your mind, you're always thinking, is it going to run out of fuel? And again, can you get him on the ground before it runs out of fuel?
I knew there was going to be a stage where I'm going to have to go down regardless. You know, I couldn't go on forever.
So John lines up for his third landing attempt.
Next time I came in approach, I was too low.
He was dropping too short, he'd have ended up on the road.
And so he was told to climb, and as he climbed, he was therefore became too high.
I tried to climb without putting power on. The next thing I knew was that the left wing, port wing, dropped, and all I could see was a house in the front, a farmhouse or something, spinning round me. And how the hell I got out of that, I don't know. This was the worst time, the whole thing.
The strain is finally starting to show on the beleaguered 77-year-old.
After the second attempt on runway 20, the voice pitch started to change slightly. And when the voice changes, you start to think, is he getting too tired?
I was tired. We've been flying since 5:30, and it was now, I think, about 7:45, and I was really, really tired. And I just wanted to sit down and have a cup of tea.
Unfortunately for John, this is no time to get a kettle on. Now exhausted and unable to read his instruments in the dark, the pensioner comes in for his fourth landing attempt.
Have you got the runway in sight, John, still?
Yeah, it's on my starboard beam.
I made the final approach, and it seemed to be I was on the right height and level.
And you're thinking, get it down, get it down, get it down, and you can watch the height come off the aircraft on the radar itself.
I kept saying to him, Paul, just keep the attitude coming down, that's the rate of descent coming down. Keep it coming down, make little adjustments if need be, which he did.
Put some power on. Power on.
He says, keep coming, John, you're doing fine, just keep coming. Now you're over the approach, John. Right, slow right down, pull the yoke back. Pull it back, John, pull it back.
Keep coming down. Power off. Power off, you're over the road.
Well, you can watch on radar the point where he passes the road, so you think he's over the road now, he's a couple of 100 feet going over the road. And there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to actually land on the runway now.
Keep coming down.
And they hit the deck, and that stage it bounced. I think it bounced twice, I'm not sure.
A few sparks, but the crosswind just started to take the aircraft just slightly from right to left.
And then I thought, I can't stop it. And then I saw this board, the indicator board for the runway, and that was coming towards me. Oh, I'm going to hit this after all that. But she stopped in time.
There you go, you made it. Well done.
That's your first night landing.
Good, well done. And that was the end of it.
John lands the plane safely, but sadly the ambulance team on the ground confirmed that his friend, the pilot, died during the flight.
So you're thinking, great, that's it, everybody's happy, he's going to walk away. But I will always feel saddened that somebody died. And how could I have done something to make it better?
I was in two minds. One, I'm actually doing what I've always wanted to do, fly an airplane. And I'm doing it fairly well, you know, because I was keeping a fairly straight level, and I was keeping on the course, and I was really proud of myself, actually, being able to do it. But my mate had died, and that's not the really way to go.
December 2013, Hawaii, USA. Clyde Kawasaki has been flying since he was 14 years old. But he didn't face his greatest challenge as a pilot until more than 40 years later on what seems like a routine run from the friendly island, Molokai.
Beautiful Hawaii weather, you know, scattered clouds, nice and warm, and nice light breeze. You go in, you check in, you take care of your airplane, you do your flight plans, and off you go. It was a normal day. The takeoff was normal, completely normal.
Clyde is taking 8 passengers from Molokai to nearby Honolulu on a single-engine Cessna 208B. But after less than a minute, disaster strikes.
You heard this bang, and it was quiet as far as the engine noises. You knew it quit.
Multiple compressor turbine blades have fractured in the plane's only engine, so the aircraft has no power at all, and it hasn't gained enough height to glide any great distance.
We were very, very low. We were very, very heavy. We had fuel to make the trip, plus these people were not small people. They were 180, 200 pounds or better, including myself. But we were near max gross takeoff weight at the time.
Clyde is left with very few options.
It only took about a second or two to realize I'm not going to make land. So the best thing I could do was just put it in the water as slowly as possible.
But just a few hundred feet above the waves, there's only so much you can do.
Everybody asked me, you know, were you trained in ocean water landings? Oh yeah, we all are, you know, land with the swell in the trough or in the top. And when you're that low to the water, you don't have a whole lot of time to figure out which way the wind's coming from, which way the waves are coming from. So you try to impact the water as slow as possible so that, you know, the aircraft does not disintegrate.
If the aircraft is smashed apart by the impact, it will sink very quickly. But if it holds together, it should float, giving a crucial window of opportunity for the passengers to escape.
So we hit the water 50, 60 miles an hour, and I was thrown into the instrument panel. And that's how I got the gash in my head and bleeding all over the place.
The plane is still intact, but floating nose down in the water.
I was like, okay, time to get out.
The passengers will need something to keep them afloat in the ocean while they wait to be rescued.
I got out of the cockpit. Everybody's putting on their life vests.
The terrified travelers evacuate the fast-sinking plane, but one passenger hasn't left.
I says, what are you doing here? He goes, I'm come back to look for another life vest for my wife. I says, okay, and I saw one floating there. So I picked it up and handed it to him and says, okay, go.
But Clyde can't get to his own life jacket because the cockpit is now underwater.
I found a seat cushion. It worked pretty good as a flotation device and jumped out.
The passengers cling desperately together, but a 6-foot wave rips the group apart.
The wave came in and that was it. Everybody went their different directions.
By now, Clyde has given up the cushion to another ailing passenger, and he is bleeding heavily.
I was getting very, very tired because I had no flotation device, and I was basically dressed the way I am now. And swam up to another couple. I asked them if I could hang on to them, you know, because I was gonna wind up drowning because I was tired. And the first thing he said was, sure, but he looks at me and he goes, brother, you're bleeding. I go, yeah, I know.
They all realise that Clyde's wound may alert the man-eating sharks that live in the waters off Hawaii.
So it was an understanding already that if the bill collector decided to come around, then I would have to depart from them, because they would be coming after me, not them.
Fortunately, the sharks don't sense the blood, but the passengers do have to cling on for dear life for 80 minutes before help arrives. 8 people survived the crash, but one of Clyde's passengers, Loretta Fuddy, died as a result of heart problems in the water after leaving the plane.
I have to take care of my passengers first before I take care of myself. And I did everything I possibly could, and it still ended up that way. And it angers me, it frustrates me, you know, that it happened the way it did. You know, I think of it almost every day.
December 2014, Seoul, South Korea. Texan Mark Stanley flies more than 100,000 miles every year as part of his job as an international lawyer. But even this veteran globetrotter has never experienced anything quite like this flight before. He takes his business class seat on flight AA280, and it leaves on schedule from Seoul Incheon Airport to his hometown of Dallas.
Boarded the flight. The takeoff was entirely uneventful, as was the first hour of the flight.
Fellow Texan John Mitchell is heading stateside on the same plane. He's in coach class. For the first hour or so, the flight is completely uneventful.
The food service was in process. The seatbelt sign was not on. There was absolutely no indication of what was about to happen.
I had my entire meal in front of me, I think, when the turbulence hit. I had a full tray of food. We fell. I mean, it was just a ridiculous fall. Several hundred feet, it felt like to me. I mean, you felt like the plane was literally falling, and everything went up. And people started screaming. It was insane. And the food and everything, all the plates and everything went up, hit the ceiling, and came back down. It was bizarre.
I immediately fastened my seatbelt because it wasn't fastened, and I thought to myself, boy, that was some strong turbulence.
So the lady next to me had a dinner plate that literally hit the ceiling, came back down, hit her on the head, and cracked on her head. I'm not joking.
Show me the bowl that hit your head. It broke. Hey.
The flight attendant to my left, she bounced up, hit her head off the ceiling, and broke the exit sign. She fell on the ground, and the food cart landed on top of her.
It's sort of like a bucking bronco. I mean, it's really hard to control. It was harrowing.
I think people were evaluating what was going on and having just no idea of what's happening.
This is the most frightening thing I've ever seen.
This kind of shaking is the result of the plane flying through very disturbed pockets of air, what is known as turbulent airflow.
There are many causes of turbulence. The main two causes are thunderstorms with significant updrafts and downdrafts with wind speeds up to 270 kilometres an hour. The other one, which is a real silent one, is clear air turbulence, typically associated with jet stream activity, where again, wind speeds up in the 200 to 300 kilometre an hour range.
Flight AA280 hit clear air turbulence. This is the most dangerous form of turbulence because it's very hard to detect.
Pilots today are armed with a radar system called multi-scan radar, which looks well ahead and scans thunderstorms and other weather events from the base right to the top and delivers a very sophisticated picture of the problems ahead. However, clear air turbulence is still a problem. It is being worked on, but we don't yet have a perfect solution to avoid clear air turbulence.
And once the plane has flown into a major occurrence of these conditions, there may be no quick solution.
The pilot in this case had a couple of options. One was to slow the aircraft down, which he did. The other one was to find smoother air, which I believe was not an option because this turbulence was so widespread.
So I've flown a lot, and you have some turbulence that you experience all the time. Just a little bit of turbulence, you know, people say get nervous and the plane's shaking. Nothing like this. Then it kept happening over and over again. And I said, well, we'll be through this in a second. But I mean, it's hopping and hopping and hopping. The shaking literally continued on for an hour.
I just did not know what was happening, and I thought it was going to be my last flight.
Please let us land safely.
Initially, Mark's main concern was with his comfort. But as the shaking goes on, he starts to worry about his safety.
So I'm wondering, how much can this plane stand? I mean, it's really, really, really shaking. And I started to get a little bit nervous, but I was also trying to calm people down. As it went on, the major thought was, how long can this aircraft withstand this kind of torture on the frame? And that's what scared me the most.
But modern planes are designed for heavy turbulence, and actually, it has less effect than you might imagine.
The plane does not move around as much as passengers would think. We hear 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, when in reality it's probably 10 or maybe 100 feet maximum. However, it is violent, it is very unnerving, and really does shake passengers up significantly. Turbulence has been, and still is, very dangerous, particularly back in the 1960s. Back in that era, weather radar was no more than a rudimentary rain gauge. In the 1960s, there were 24 accidents, 762 deaths related to turbulence events. Since 2000, however, the number has been dramatically reduced. So we've learned an enormous amount about turbulence and its impacts.
In this case, the plane survives about 70 minutes of turbulence before the pilot comes on and announces that the flight is diverting to Tokyo Narita Airport.
The plane is turning. I think we're going to Tokyo.
By now, the aircraft looks like a crime scene.
I mean, there was food everywhere, on the ceiling, on the floor. The carts had turned over. There was food that had spilled out of the carts. It was absolutely the most disgusting thing. My clothes were absolutely covered with food.
All I know is all my food went just flying.
Yeah, no kidding.
You got wine all over you.
Oh, yeah, nice.
After a further terrifying 2.5 hours in the air, the Boeing 777 finally puts down in Japan.
There were emergency vehicles chasing us down. They set up a hospital with a tent next to our plane. By that time, we were just glad to be alive.
There were 2 serious injuries, and another 10 passengers suffered minor medical problems. This experience of traumatic turbulence hasn't put Mark off flying, but it has changed one thing.
I keep my seatbelt on the entire flight. If I get up, I try to get back down on my seat because I don't know when this is going to happen again. Every time there's air turbulence, I flash back to American 280 from Seoul, and it frightens me for a second, and then I just calm down.